again, 25 years ago when I started this business, I would have said, if you've sort of got that traditional profile of a thought leader, like you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or you're a professor at some top university, you're going to get a book deal. That is not true anymore. The people who are getting the deals, they're looking at numbers. The publishers are looking at your social media. They're looking at the size of your platform. What's the size of your email newsletter? How many followers do you have on Instagram and TikTok? No kidding. They're looking at the numbers. They want to know what influencers you know, what podcasts you can get on. That's another way to spin it. If you yourself don't have the following of, I'm talking hundreds of thousands.
Well, welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry here, your host. I have MeiMei Fox here on the show with us. Super pumped to have her. MeiMei, right off the bat here, tell us a little bit about what is high performance? What does that define? What does that look like? What does that sound like? And then we'll dive into some more of your story here, but let's kick it off there.
Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And I was listening to your show and listening to some other people define high performance. It's hard because it's a very abstract term, right? And so I'm sure it can mean different things to different people. But to me, it means putting in your best effort and trying hard. And I think that in order to be high performance, the best way to go about that is to be aligned with your life purpose. So I'm really gung-ho on this idea of life purpose and finding your purpose in life. And I know you come from a purpose-driven career yourself.
Yeah.
I have spent almost a decade writing profiles of entrepreneurs, CEOs, change makers for Forbes. And my specific task at Forbes Women when I was brought on about a decade ago to write for them was to talk about how to align your career with your life purpose. So I got to talk to hundreds and hundreds of successful people about that. And every single time it is being purpose driven that brought them success and brought them the high performance piece, because it was being purpose driven that kept them going when things got tough, helped them overcome their challenges, and really gave them the clarity of the vision that, they were going to put in the hours, they're going to overcome those obstacles, they're going to give it their all, and they're going to get where they're going. They all talked about the importance of being aligned with their purpose.
That's so true. So true. Now, how do you use that with the success that you've been being able to build out? What do people know about you? What are some of those things that you've been able to use that purpose focus to be able to build right now?
Well, it's fun because my column at Forbes was about aligning with your life purpose, because I suggested that, because I myself have been purpose driven my whole career. So I graduated from Stanford with a degree in psychology, which is kind of like, what are you going to do with that? And so I went and got a job in a management consulting firm, McKinsey & Company. Very prestigious, very glamorous job. Like, this is the be all end all. And it was really amazing in so many ways. I worked with really brilliant people, and I learned so much in my 2 years there. And I also was crystal clear on the fact that I did not belong. And I didn't feel I was doing purpose-driven work. I have an underlying purpose to make a positive impact on the world and to leave the world a better place than I found it. I come from a long lineage of people who've devoted their lives to service on both sides of my family. And so that was really instilled in me from a young age, that is the reason we're put on this planet, is to help make the world a better place.
Right.
And I couldn't handle the fact that I was doing this work of making rich, wealthy companies richer. It was like, nope, this is a no-go. So after 2 years, I left, and then I was really lost. I didn't know what to do. And I had a friend who was about 15 years older than me, and he was a doctor, and he was writing a book. And he's like, do you want to work on this book with me? So I said, sure. I don't know what I'm doing. That sounds like a good stopgap. I went to the bookstore and I bought a book called How to Write a Book Proposal. This was pre-internet, okay? I'm from the dark ages. In case you didn't know, we didn't used to have an internet and Amazon where you could order books from. You just had to go to the bookstore, buy a book. I read this book called How to Write a Book Proposal, cover to cover. I wrote a book proposal. I emailed it to everyone I knew and said, does anyone know anyone in publishing who'd be willing to give me some feedback on this? And one of my friends wrote back, I have a friend. She's very junior at Penguin Putnam. She's willing to take a look at it for you. So I emailed it to her and she wrote back a couple of weeks later and said, we never do this. We're buying your book. And that was Penguin Putnam. So it was a big 5 publishing house. We were unknown authors. It was, if I knew then what I knew now, I would say it was such a fluke. But at the time I was just like, yeah, and now we have a book deal and now we're writing a book. So wrote that book. Wow. And out of that, the senior editor on that, this woman, Amy Hertz, really became my mentor. I'm a huge believer also in mentorship. We can talk about that as part of high performance as well.
Yes.
I was so blessed to have this incredible woman mentor who took me under her wing, got me a literary agent, got me my first next book deal after that one, and helped me form that and into a career when I didn't even know it existed as a career. But what I knew is I got to work with these incredible people, like really brilliant, talented, amazing people to share their stories with the world. And always their stories are making the world a better place because I worked in the realm of health and wellness, spirituality, and psychology. So it was always, with the intention of helping other people through their life journeys.
Yeah.
And I did that for 25 years until I launched my own business to help people tell their stories called Your Best Selling Book, which is what I'm doing now, but with the same goal of helping people share their stories.
Well, what's the beginning, the drive behind all of this? Even going to that prestigious school at Stanford,
yeah,
like you knew you're a little bit different. Was this kind of a push from your folks that maybe kind of pushed you into that edge, or is there something like that was driving you from the very beginning?
I mean, it's a great question. My parents and my grandparents were college educated, so I'm very privileged. I come from a place of privilege. That said, nobody went to Stanford. Like I was, my brother and I were like really competitive with each other. Strangely, he's only 18 months older than me, and he was only a year ahead of me in school. So I feel like he really motivated me. He was my older brother to do better in school. Honestly, without him, I don't know I would have done as well as I did. He was just 1 year ahead of me, one step ahead of me. And I was like, I'm going to do as well as him. I'm going to get as good grades as him. I'm going to work as hard as he does. So he really motivated me a lot.
Did you go to Stanford then too?
I did go to Stanford. He went to Princeton. He got his PhD from MIT in astrophysics.
Okay.
So he's no dummy. But it was great, it was really, and then I think at some point on that journey, like somewhere in high school, I realized that I loved it. Like there is no greater feeling to me than setting a goal and accomplishing it. Yeah. And so I was very intrinsically motivated. I was not getting it from my parents. They were not like tiger parents saying, you have to do this. In fact, at one point, my mom said, you know what? Some of your friends are getting paid $10 for every A that they make. I'll pay $10 to get a B.
Just because she wanted to have more of a relationship with you, so you're not like consumed with schoolwork or something.
Yeah, like just relax a little bit, chill out. Like it's all good, But no, I really was driven to get those top grades, and
that leads you into the career that you have now, and that's paying off quite a bit for even the clients you're working with.
I really work with the upper echelon of like CEOs, entrepreneurs, leaders, thought leaders, professors at top universities, doctors at top hospitals. Those are the client base. But they're all heart-centered. This is where the purpose comes in. Like if they're just in it to make money and get famous, like we're not a fit. It has to come from the heart. They have to have a mission to make a positive impact.
Now, I love that. You're communicating, you're connected with people that have a purpose behind it, because then it becomes not as fulfilling for you with the work that you're doing with those people. But sometimes people just write a book. What are the main drivers for people writing one altogether? Like,
I
why
mean,
do
that's
people
such a
do
good
it? Why do they
question.
have it? Like,
It's such a good question. I mean, I've heard 1,000 times, and I'm sure you have too, Nathan, that a book is the new calling card. It's kind of like you need to have a book. If you There are places that won't book you as a speaker unless you have a book.
mm,
There are media outlets, that really want to see that you're an author of a certain book to talk to you. The book is not going to make you money in and of itself, nor is it
yeah.
going to make you famous in and of itself. So, but it is part of your whole platform. And so what I see is more and more people writing books because of the rise of personal branding in our culture, right? And this has been, I mean, what would you say, like the last 2 decades, really? And even more so in the last decade with social media.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of flipped things around, whereby in the past you started with your institution. You'd start with like a Stanford, right? Like you're a professor at Stanford or Harvard or something. And then you'd get a book deal from a traditional publisher. And then that would help to elevate your brand. Now it's the opposite. Now people are coming in like, I'm building my own brand. I'm doing this my own way. I don't even need a traditional publisher. I can self publish, and that's perfectly valid. Nobody
Yeah.
has a problem with that. And then I'm going to use that to get into, you know, onto stages, into the room with a higher caliber of people. So I see a lot of the people coming to us, it's because of that. Or quite simply, they just want to run a business based around what they know. They're
Mm.
coaches, they're leaving education, they're leaving medicine. Unfortunately, it's a pretty grim time both in higher education and in medicine right now. For a lot of people, they're pretty disgruntled and frustrated. They
Yeah.
want to go do consulting, they want to go do coaching, and this book is a way for them to distill all their knowledge and present it to people as a calling card. But then there's a whole other side of what I do, which is the people who are writing kind of what I would call more legacy memoirs, and
Hmm.
that is a very different motivation. They're not so motivated by the thought leadership. They want to distill their wisdom and share it with their families and friends and employees and have something really concrete to leave behind.
What would you say the value of trying to get a prestigious publisher compared to just doing self publishing? Because that's getting easier now to do. I mean,
Oh,
to
yeah.
self publish. I mean, it's so much easier to do the on demand printing with Amazon. Like people could just put it up and then just have it like that. Compared to, what are those main companies? What would be the reason or value that people would have that altogether?
I like that question too. So it's called the Big Five because all of the smaller imprints out there, they all roll up under like Random House, Simon and Schuster, just 5 companies in America. And it is getting harder and harder to get a book deal. It's less than 1% of authors now get book deals. It's really hard.
1%. Whoa.
1%. That simultaneously self-publishing has risen and become more and more respected. And as you said, I mean, this is completely because of technology. This is 100% because of technology. The fact that you can put a book up on Amazon, you don't even have to print a copy. 90% of books are bought Kindle Direct Publishing. I
Hmm.
mean, Amazon owns this still to this day. They own books and publishing. So you don't even have to have a printed copy. You could go generate a book on AI in 2 hours and stick it up on Kindle Direct Publishing and be selling it tomorrow. Is it going to be a
Yeah.
good book? No. Is it going
No.
to have 1 ounce of your voice and your story in it?
Right.
No. It's going to be what we call AI slop. However, you can do it. On the flip side of this, you go pursue a traditional publisher and you asked why. This is a much longer and harder road. Like you're going to have to start with trying to get a literary agent. If you can get a literary agent, they'll pitch a bunch of publishers and see if they can get a publishing deal. If you get a publishing deal, it'll be 18 months until your book is ready. So it's a
Hmm.
long road, and they're going to take 85% of the profits. So you get
Wild.
15%. However, there's a reason. One is that they give you an advance. So there are quite simply people who do it for financial reasons. They can't front the, let's say, 10 grand ish to do a really, nice job of hybrid publishing. And they need the money to take the time to write the book. But there is also still a little edge of credibility. Like, I believe you cannot get reviewed in the New York Times book review unless it's published by a big five publisher. So there are still
Okay.
some hurdles. And also, like, if you are aiming for a literary prize, for example, um, like a Newberry or something, you have to have a traditional publisher. And they will put a little bit of resources into helping promote you. For example, connecting you with other top notch authors, asking people to write a foreword or give you cover quotes. And maybe they might shine a spotlight on you very briefly with helping a bit with press, but that's going to go away very quickly. And they are expecting you to do almost all of the promotional work yourself.
Hmm. I want to go back to that question of why it's only 1%. Is this just because you got to know people to be able to get into it? Like that's so wild. Is it just the amount of volume of just people giving them? It's like that 1% is just mind blowing that only a handful of people get accepted with that. I mean,
Yeah.
is it just who you know with that then?
It is a combination of factors. So
Okay.
again, 25 years ago when I started this business, I would have said, if you've sort of got that traditional profile of a thought leader, like you're the CEO of a Fortune 500 company or you're a professor at some top university, you're going to get a book deal. That is not true anymore.
Hmm.
The people who are getting the deals, they're looking at numbers. The publishers are looking at your social media. They're looking at the size of your platform. What's the size of your email newsletter? How many followers do you have on Instagram and TikTok? No kidding. They're
Wow.
looking at the numbers. They want to know what influencers you know, what podcasts you can get on. That's another way to spin it. If you yourself don't have the following of, I'm talking hundreds of thousands. That's what I'm talking about. Hundreds of thousands of followers. Can you get on certain shows and certain programs? They want to see a really solid PR and marketing plan. They want you to sell the book because they're dinosaurs. They're not making a buck the way they used to. So
Hmm.
you have to make the buck. And that's why less than 1% get a deal. Now, that said, knowing someone definitely always helps. I mean, everything is a human relationship. So is publishing. It's always beneficial to know someone and have a personal connection. But that's what I'm being told across the board. And I've had numerous conversations with people in the publishing industry.
Now, you've written multiple books, right? Not only just for your clients, but you personally. Like, there's an aspect of things that people do with volume. Like, people have tons of books, and resources.
Right.
And I was trying to gauge for myself of like, hey, if I'm looking at the long term play, like some books can hit that as you grow, right? But like writing a
Yes.
book for someone that's needed to do now, and then you could add other books. I think some people just think, oh, if I've written a book. No, it's like you can, in your career, write. What's the advantage of someone really thinking long term like that and just saying, hey, let's put out a book, books like loads, the volume.
Yes.
What's the angle, the thought, the strategy behind that?
I love that. You're so very thoughtful. So there's definitely an advantage to that. So, I mean, there's actually two things you said here, which is one is the long game. And this is interesting because just in the past 2 years, I've seen a shift in this. Whereas in terms of publication and promotion, I used to hear all resources being focused on the launch. So 100% of the effort is like, we've got to launch, we got to hit the New York Times bestseller list that first week, sell as many copies as possible. But that's tricky. You can't game the system because you can't like go buy 10,000 copies yourself. That doesn't count towards bestseller status. It has to be different people at different times in different locations on
Hmm.
different platforms to get counted for a bestseller status. And so all the resources were devoted to book launch. Just in the last 2 years, I've started to hear That's not always the best methodology. There's a long game here. So it's really interesting that intuitively you're saying that, is that you can have a book out and not have it be a bestseller right away, and then keep building. And the reason you launch more books is because once you start to get eyeballs and once you start to build a following and people like you, they want more, and they will buy more and more and more. They'll buy every book that you write. And, Chicken Soup for the Soul is a great example of this, because that book, Jack Kornfield, he wrote that book. It was not a bestseller. I don't believe it hit the bestseller list for the first year that it was out. And he just hammered relentlessly. Like, he carried it, copies around in his briefcase everywhere he went. He handed it to everyone he knew. He talked about it every opportunity he got, and eventually became a bestseller. And then it just took off and went viral. And from there, how many books are in that series now? I don't even know, like over 20, Chicken Soup for the Teenager's Soul, Chicken Soup for so there's that angle as well. If you kind of have a book and you could do like, high performance, and then you could do high performance for athletes, high performance for CEOs, high performance for parents, right?
So if someone's going to start writing a book, I mean, like you had hinted toward it before, it's like you can use AI, you can, launch it. Like, what type of tenacity and focus does it take for someone to say, hey, we got to sit down? What's the process? What does that look like for someone to go from start to finish? What does that
If you want
entail?
a good book?
Yes.
Yeah. Because as I said, you can have a book of AI slop in 2 hours. It takes a lot of tenacity and commitment. It really does. It's not easy, but it's super rewarding. And every person I've ever spoken with, every author I've worked with, says that the process of writing the book has been one of the most transformational experiences of their life.
Why? It just requires is that just because the discipline that it takes, or?
No, I think it's the discipline, but it's also the deep dive that you do. You end up doing a deep dive into your soul, and really looking at, like, what are the challenges I faced? What are the lessons I learned? What is the wisdom that I have to share? And it can be really healing. And, the neuroscience is there. I talk about this in my TED Talk about the story cure, the power of storytelling, that neuroscientists have hooked people up to fMRI machines while they're writing their stories, and they form new neural pathways.
Wow.
So it is actually healing. It actually forms new neural pathways for you to write your story. So it ends up being this, like, you're doing it a lot of the time for like external reasons, maybe in many ways, but it ends up being very much an inner journey. And that is critical. You are not going to get that from putting a few sentences on a page and asking AI to write your book.
No.
And in terms of how to get started, I mean, I have a clear process for that. I'd be happy to share some of that with your listeners if you'd like.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That'd be great.
Okay. So number one is, and I myself suffered from this when I first got started. I thought that I couldn't write unless I had set aside a chunk of time, like 2 to 3 hours, because of the flow state, which I don't know if you've studied the flow state at all, and the psychological research on that. And so I kind of was like, I'm not going to do good writing unless I'm in a flow state, and I need time and I need to sort of sink into it. I mean, yes, great. Absolutely. If you can set aside 2 to 3 hours, be my guest. Like, please, by all means, that's amazing and good for you. But if you have a full-time job and you have a family and other commitments, that becomes less and less likely. So what you can do is the opposite. And I steal this directly from James Clear in Atomic Habits. I love his work. 5 minutes a day, right? If you can sit and write 5 minutes a day every day, you could write a book in a year, because I guarantee you that some of those times you're going to write longer. You're going to get caught up in it. You're going to find yourself just on a roll. And also, you can now use AI. So this is what we're teaching in my course now, in the Your Best-Selling Book course. Once you have a certain amount of writing done, Like an introduction and a first chapter is what I recommend. If you can write 2 chapters entirely in your own voice that you're really happy with, you can start to use AI to fill out the rest of the book. And you have to keep plugging in your stories all along the way. Stories from your own life, or if you're a coach, stories of your clients. If you're a business person, stories of your employees or your customers. You still need to put those personal stories throughout, but the AI can accelerate the process considerably.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
love it. I love
Yeah.
that you're thinking on those terms. Because I mean,
Yeah.
sometimes I think if I be talking to a book coach, they'd be
Yeah.
like, "No, you can't use AI at all. That's off limits." And then you're like, "Hey, let's conjoin these because it's important now in this world to really be able to dial that in." So that's amazing. That's level one. You're saying.
That's level 1. That's how to get started. And what inspired me in that regard was I was in the process of teaching my first cohort of my course, which I had spent like months preparing the videos and the materials and everything. I was in the midst of teaching it when ChatGPT came out. And my initial reaction was like, it's the end of the world. Like it's, like run the other way. And I think a lot of people can have that reaction to it. But it was actually hearing about this high school teacher. And so, all these high school teachers were doing what you're saying. Like, I'm sure a lot of book coaches do. You can't use AI, can't use AI. We have a no AI policy, right? This teacher did the opposite. He told his students to use AI to write their paper about Shakespeare and then analyze it. What did it do well? What did it do poorly? He said he had never seen better engagement in his class.
Wow. That's cool.
And isn't that cool? And that's what got me curious about it. That's what got me being like, well, maybe it can be my thought partner. Maybe it can be my collaborator. It's not going to do the work for you, but it's your collaborator. And I'm pretty excited about it until it gets so good that it's just does me in completely.
Well, let me ask you this too, because there's impatient people like me, probably, is that
Sure.
like 18 months to go through like the number was 1% of these top dogs of trying to get these things, or if they do self-publishing, 18 months is still just a long time to think about like actually publishing a book. Like ideally doing it right, the
Yeah.
way you coach people, the way
Yeah.
you're formulated. What would be an ETA with someone really creating something that they're excited about, if even if they did an hour a day or 5 minutes a day? Like what would that end up looking like if they really had a primed focus slot in their calendar to get it done?
And I tell people 9 months, like birthing a baby.
Okay.
If you hybrid publish, 9 months, you can go from not a word on the page to holding a published, beautiful printed book, having it up on Amazon, having an Amazon bestseller. Easy to guarantee an Amazon bestseller, for the record.
Okay.
That's not hard. And you can do that. And then, you're along the way, you are building your book tribe. You are getting endorsements. You're getting, quotes from people. You are doing that simultaneously as you're finishing writing your book.
That's
so
amazing.
So that when you launch, you kind of have, some pre-sales and some people who are excited about it. And
let me ask you, why should someone not write a book?
This is really great too. And I talk to people all the time and I say, I'm like the worst salesperson in the world. I should probably take your course. Because I'm always going to be honest. I will always be honest with you. And there are people I talk to and I'm like, I talked to this guy. I talked to this guy like just a few months ago. He's amazing. He's like super successful. He was a hedge fund guy in New York, like plenty of money. And he wants to write a book about sustainability and the environment and like kind of his mid-career pivot to that and why he did that. And he wants to really, his motivation was to inspire other people to make that shift. And as we talked, I was like, you know what? I don't think the book is the way to do this. I think your book, like you're going to be able to sell that to other people in your upper echelon. But if you're trying to reach people, like young people who are just getting started in their careers, people who aren't billionaires, I really think you should think about a podcast where you interview people who've come into careers at all different levels, at all different times in their life, in sustainability, why they've done it, how they can make that work. And so it wasn't a book in his case, and he didn't want to be a thought leader. He didn't want to be taking the stage. Like, that didn't interest him. He was involved in some nonprofits. So you have to look at the motivation. Another reason not to write a book, because you think it'll make you rich and famous.
Yeah. There you
go. Then I'm just going to be like, sorry, it's not going to do that. And then, if somebody walks away at that point, then I'm like, I did my job.
That was the first thing when I talked to you, even before the podcast, was I was like, I know this is not good. I'm going to lose money. I'm going to be losing money. And why do people like glamorize it so much? So like they're going to make loads of money from it.
It's not. And then there was another reason that I was just about to tell you. That's another glamorization. No, but it goes right along with what you're saying of the glamorizing, which is this Sarah Jessica Parker in Sex and the City. God bless her. Because I loved that show. I mean, I watched that show religiously. As I was struggling along to make it as a writer, like I was watching that show and I was like, how does she live in that apartment in New York City? But it is, it's the media. The media like glamorizes it, TV shows, movies. We have this like glamorous idea. I've talked to people who've said like, I've just been working as a teacher and I've been working so hard for 20 years and I just want to write this book so I can, go to Italy and write from some villa along the seaside. I'm like, beautiful, beautiful. I have that vision for you, but like writing one book is not going to get you there.
Right.
Unless you're one in probably not even a million. Probably like 1 in 10 million who gets that overnight runaway viral success, chick flick summer read or spy novel.
What are some of the qualities of people you see that do a really good job with you and from people that are successful? I think you can come up with probably some traits of people that you've identified, like, hey, they would write a good book, or hey, they've worked with them, and it's because of these, characteristics or qualities that have jumped out. That's been catchy for you.
So I think number one, they've had success in some domain. It does not have to be financial. It does not have to be educational, but you have had success in some domain. You have some aspect of your life journey that is going to have, your success could be you recovered from horrible addictions. That could be your success. But you have wisdom and life lessons to share that people are going to know, love, and trust you because you have lived it and you have the stories to back that up. So that is one. You have to be credible. Number two is you have to be vulnerable. I mean, this is like huge. And this has changed too in the 25 years that I've been working in this business, Nathan. It was not the case 25 years ago. People could write these books where they're blah, blah, blah. I'm so amazing. I'm so amazing. I'm so great. You can't do that anymore. No one is going to like you. No one is going to celebrate your book. And all you have to do is go listen to Brené Brown and watch her TED Talk. Or if you don't follow her already, I love her. And she talks about the power of vulnerability. It connects your readers to you. It makes them want to follow you. Being vulnerable, being authentic. So you have to be prepared to do that. It doesn't mean you have to spill the beans on every last aspect of your life journey. There are things that you should keep to yourself, that if you don't want them potentially trolled on the internet, don't share them. But you have to get vulnerable. Number three is you got to be willing to hustle and promote yourself. And you don't have to necessarily have done a lot of that. But you have to be willing to do it. You have to. It's going to be a lot of like, buy my book, buy my book, buy my book, follow me, come to see me speak. You got to be willing to do that.
I feel like that's a characteristic that someone has to just have internally. Right? Some like that drive, that grit. Am I wrong in that? I mean, I feel like that's something that you just, I mean, to have any sort of success, you had to grind and drive and do the hard things that built that and forged that type of characteristic. But that's needed, you're saying, to launch, and you see those qualities that are able to get over the one person that writes, a few paragraphs of like, hey, I'm going to write a book one day, and then just never finishes it.
Yeah.
Some things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the drive, that drive, that has probably led them to the success that they've experienced in life, is the drive that will lead you to the success with the book. It's the same drive.
What about habits? Now, like, if someone needs to start stuff, like, what are some of the things that people need to adopt? They need to start really carving out on their calendar. They need to set aside, like, is this going to get a hotel for once a month? Like, tell us the things that you would suggest people to do to really get in this focus zone of book writing.
If you want to get it done, aside from the 5 minutes a day, which I still recommend committing to no matter what, don't let it go on the days when they're not your big days. Keep it going, even if it's just a little bit. It is beneficial. I mean, I think personally, like, if you can set aside a couple of hours once a week, that's really helpful. You're just going to start to get to the next level of getting into the flow, or, going back and reviewing what you've done so far. And then if you have the wherewithal and the privilege to be able to go, like, take a writing retreat every month for a weekend, again, by all means, you're going to get there much faster. A lot of people I see, they kind of get to a certain level, like a messy rough draft, and then go take a writing retreat, right? And then go spend like 2 days just diving into it. And you can hire people. I mean, not to be self-promotional here, but a lot of people work with ghostwriters, freelance editors, book coaches. Every book you've ever read that's written by a famous person, almost all of them, doctor, CEO, celebrity, athlete, was written with a ghostwriter. And that doesn't mean you don't do any of the work yourself. This is really important. The ghostwriter can only write the book if you're there partnering with them, telling your stories and sharing what matters. It's no different than AI otherwise. It's like, go write a book for me. Yeah, well, but what's your story? Where have you been? What are the lessons you've learned? But, a lot of people hire someone to help them. They hire a professional, or, they get started and then they hire a professional further down the road, just depending on your, where you're at, how much time you have to devote to it, how many other commitments you have. Very few people at that caliber write their books themselves.
That's amazing. Well, MeiMei, I can ask you a million questions because you're just so lovely to talk to, and just, you have wealth of wisdom in these areas of stuff. How can people follow you or learn about you or understand how to connect with you further? What's the best way to do that?
I mean, I really have an easy name. I'm very lucky. It's completely unique. There's no other MeiMei Fox in the world that I know of. MEIFOX. So if you just Google that, you'll find me. I have a business. It's called Your Best Selling Book. The website is writeyourbestsellingbook.com. So that's pretty straightforward as well. And you're welcome to find me and connect with me on LinkedIn, Instagram. I'm MeiMei Fox everywhere.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on the podcast today. Everybody needs to go down there and check her out and follow her. And if you're wanting to write a book, she's also the best person to probably talk to be able to help you be able to make that happen. So reach out to her and make that happen. Thank you again for listening in on this podcast. Until the next time, we're here to support you all along the way to your better self.